Megillas Esther, and we are up to Perek Zayin. If you remember, the tide has turned. That there was a fast on the 13th of Nisan, the 14th of Nisan, the 15th of Nisan. Esther Hamalka went into Achashverosh on the 15th of Nisan and invited the Melech and Haman to a Mishtah. At that point, however, the only thing she said was she invited them to a Mishtah the next day. That night, the king reads the book of Zichronos and wants to reward Mordechai, and Haman is ordered, so to speak, to dress Mordechai in the royal levush and lead him in a horse and proclaim, Kacha yeyaseh li'ish, so shall be done to the man, Asher HaMelech chafetz bikaro, that the king wants to honor, and of course, Al Pi Kabbalah, this is also a reference to Hashem wants to honor. And Haman is totally humiliated. Now, Lamaisa, in terms of the Gezerah to eradicate the Jews on the 13th of Adar, nothing happened to that yet. But Haman is Mavuyash, Haman suffers Bizayin, and even his so-called friends are no longer his friends, but they're Chachamim, and they say, if Mordechai is of the Jewish people, once he begins to have Hatzlacha, you will not be able to defeat him. So Haman is crushed, Haman is humiliated, and precisely at that time, messengers, emissaries from the king come and say, time to go to the banquet. And this is the second day of Pesach. So Perek Zayin Pasuk Aleph begins, Vayavay HaMelech v'Haman lichtei semester Amalka. The king and Haman are drinking wine together with Esther the Malka. So Haman thinks, once again, I'm being honored. I'm the only person besides the king that Esther wants. And once again, Achashverosh asks, as he always asks, Vayomer HaMelech liEsther, Gam b'yom hasheni b'mishtah hayayin, Ma she'latech Esther HaMalka. What is it that you want to ask from me? I know that it can't just be to invite me to a party. There must be something you want to ask me. V'tinasein lach, whatever you ask will be given to you. Ma bakashaseich, what is your request? Ad chatzi hamalchus v'seyas, I will give you up to half of my kingdom. Again, Chazal explain, as they explain every single reference, that Achashverosh doesn't know if Esther is Jewish, but perhaps she is. And perhaps she might ask for the rebuilding of the second Beis HaMikdash, which is in the middle of the kingdom, spiritually, meaning everything surrounds it. And what he's saying is he's hedging his bets. I'll give you everything you want, but not the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash. So at this point, unlike the first Mishtah, where all she could say was to invite him to a second Mishtah, she now opens up. And for the first time, for the very first time, she is revealing that she is Jewish. Vatan Esther Hamalka Vataymar. And Esther finally says, Imatsasi chen b'einecha hamelech. If I have found favor in your eyes, v'im ala melech toiv, and if this is good in the eyes of the king, all I want is that I should not die. Tinasein li nafshi b'she'elasi. Give me my soul, is my request. V'ami b'vakashasi, and my nation is what I am seeking. Because Haman wants to kill all Jews, that includes Esther herself. Ki, Pasuk Dalet, nimkarnu ani v'ami. I and my nation have been sold. We haven't been sold to be slaves, we've been sold to be destroyed. Lahashmid, to destroy, laharok, to kill, lahabed, to eradicate. If all that was happening is we were going to be sold into slavery, hecharashti, I would have been silent. I would have been willing to take that. I would have been willing to accept as part of Golos. A Yid is still in Golos, even though there's a Beis HaMikdash in Eretz Yisrael. So we're makabel, all sorts of bizyainis, all sorts of bad things. I would have been silent. But ki ein hatsar shove benezek hamelech. So this is actually grammatically a difficult phrase to translate. But Rashi says what it means is the enemy, tsar is the enemy, shove choshesh. The enemy does not care about damage to the king. Ein hatsar shove benezek hamelech. Because Esther is making a pragmatic statement. Jews contribute to society. Jews build up a malchus. Jews strengthen the culture. If Haman wants to eradicate a whole nation, and there's no profit coming to the king from it, this is an enemy who does not care about damage to the king. But she didn't yet say who the enemy is. She just said, this is an enemy that does not care about damage to the king. Now again, it also has a double meaning. He doesn't care about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Vayomer HaMelech Achashverosh Vayomer li Esther HaMalka. So the king says to Esther, Mi huza. Who is this person? V'ezehu. And what type of person is he? Meaning, I need to know his name, but what type of Meshugana wants to eradicate the queen? Of course, Haman didn't know that Esther was Jewish, but Esther is presenting it as if Haman wants to eradicate the queen. Who wants to do that? Asher malo libai lases kain, that he concluded in his heart to do such a thing. Who is he? So now, Vatomer Esther. Esther says, Ish tsar v'oyev. The man who is the adversary and the enemy is Haman Harazeh, the evil man Haman. So for the first time, Esther reveals that the very nation that Haman wants to destroy is the queen's nation. And this is why, Bahashkacha, Esther never revealed that she was Jewish. If she would reveal that she was Jewish, so then Haman would never have got a decree against the Jewish people. And his own nefilah as Mizera Amalek would never have been engineered. If his nefilah is engineered because he's trying to kill the queen, it has to be that he didn't know that the queen was Jewish. So he's geyser on Am Yisrael. The queen then says she's Jewish, so Haman is trying to kill her. And that is what gets Achashverosh upset. V'havan nivat. Nivat is when you're so shocked that you go back. Haman went backwards in fear. L'fnei hamelech v'hamalka, the king and the queen. V'hamelech kam b'chamaso v'mishtayai, and the king is so angry that he gets up in his fury from the party. El ginas habisan, he goes into the garden and the orchard to cool off a little bit. V'Haman amad l'vakesh al nafsho mi-Esther HaMalka. And Haman gets up to beg for mercy from Esther. He says, I didn't know you were Jewish. I didn't mean to go after you. Ki ra'ah. Because Haman understands. Ki kalsa elav hara'ah me'et hamelech. That bad things are happening here. He needs mercy. He's begging Esther for mercy. V'hamelech shav miginas habisan el beis mishtei hayayin. The king comes back from the garden into the house where the party is going on. V'haman nofel ala mita asher Esther ala. And Haman is falling on the couch that Esther is sitting or reclining on. Now, there are two different ways of learning. The simple meaning is that this is part of his supplication, like he's going on his knees begging her for mercy. But it looks like he is seducing her. Now, Chazal say, different. Chazal actually say that Haman was begging from a standing position, because that's what the previous pasuk says. Haman amad levakesh al nafsho, and Haman nofel means a malach pushed him, which means, in theory, it's interesting, Achashverosh might have been convinced, right? We have to put every nail in the coffin. Achashverosh might have been convinced to let Haman off the hook. Because after all, on the etzem destruction of the nation, Achashverosh agreed. And on the argument that Haman is going to destroy the queen, Haman's defense is, I didn't know she was Jewish. I never would have sought the destruction of the Jewish people had I known this would have included the Malka. So Haman B'Emerson has a defense. And maybe after Achashverosh got over his anger, he would have been receptive to that defense. So the final nail of the coffin, though, is when he sees Haman kind of kneeling next to his queen, he thinks it's a seduction. And he says in a very famous saying, Vayomer HaMelech, Hagam lichbaish es hamalka imi babayis. Are you trying to conquer my queen in my own home when I'm still around? Of course, Haman wasn't doing that, but the Malach made it look as if Haman was doing that, because this is engineering the downfall of Amalek. You want to seduce my wife in my home, in my presence? Now here, of course, Haman could have made an argument that wasn't his intention, but it was too late at this point. Hadavar yatsa mipi hamelech. When the words came out of the mouth of the king, and of course this also has a remez, this was HaKadosh Baruch Hu's gezerah, melech, Pnei Haman chafu. The face of Haman, chafu, was covered up with shame, and he couldn't even defend himself. His face was covered up with shame, humiliation, and fear. Now we have yet another thing. Vayomer Charvaina. Now Charvaina was simply a servant. Although some say, Chazal, that this was actually Eliyahu Hanavi who disguised himself as Charvaina. And Charvaina is Echad min HaSarvisim, one of the servants, one of the eunuchs. He wasn't necessarily even that important. Well, actually, let me go back for a second. The first time Charvona is mentioned, he was one of the servants who were told to summon Vashti. So he's not one of the Chachamim, he's one of the servants, again called eunuchs, because they would often castrate these servants if they were hanging around with women that were part of the royal harem. So Charvaina said before the king, Your Majesty, something else Haman did. He's trying to kill Mordechai, which Haman never got around to requesting from the king. He built this huge pole of 50 amos high to kill Mordechai, who is precisely the person that the king loved and the king wanted to honor earlier this morning, second day of Pesach. Hine ha'etz asher asa Haman leMordechai. Behold, you can see the gigantic pole, 50 amos high, that Haman made to hang Mordechai. And who is Mordechai? You honored him this morning. Asher diber tov al hamelech, who spoke good words to protect the king. Omeid bebeis Haman, it is standing in Haman's courtyard. Gavaya chamishim ama. So not only is Haman trying to kill your queen, and not only is he trying to seduce your queen, but he's killing the man who saved your life. Vayomer HaMelech. And the king said, again, Hashem, Achashverosh, Tiluhu alav, hang Haman. Vayitlu et Haman alo eitz, asher heichin leMordechai. Haman was hung on the tree that was prepared for Mordechai. Haman engineered his own destruction. The very emtsai that he made in order to kill Mordechai is the emtsai that will kill him, or that he'll be hung upon. V'chamas hamelech, and then the anger of the king, shachacha, abated, went away. Again, in Pshuto Shel Mikra, the anger of Achashverosh was abated. According to the Medrash, the anger of Hashem against Am Yisrael now went away. And the reason is because the Aveira of Shaul in not wiping out Agag, in not carrying out Megillas Amalek, has been rectified by the descendants of Shaul, Mordechai and Esther. They were masakein, the Aveira of Shaul, by engineering the downfall of Haman, and therefore the anger of HaKadosh Baruch Hu on that Aveira abated. And this is why we say in Shoshanis Yaakov, the song that we sing after Megillah reading, V'gam charvaina zochor latayv. May charvaina be remembered for good, because charvaina was the one who supplied the last bit of information that resulted in the hanging of Haman. So again, when was Haman hung? Haman was hung on the 16th of Nisan, the second day of Pesach, in the 12th year of Achashverosh's reign. The Megillah began in the 3rd year. This is now the 12th year. Esther was taken queen in the 7th year. Mordechai overheard Bigsan Viseresh in the 7th year. Haman's Gezerah is in year 12. The fast was Yud Gimel, Yud Dalet, Tesvav. Tesvav, first day of Pesach, Esther comes, invites them to a Mishnah. That night, the king reads about Mordechai. The morning of the 16th, Mordechai is honored. And at the Mishnah, later that same day, Haman is finally hung. That is why there's an interesting minhag that some Hasidim have, that on the 2nd day of Pesach, which commemorates the hanging of Haman, they eat a Pesach Dika Hamantajan. I've never had that. And they actually say at the Seudah, Sheshanis Yaakov. Again, it's very, very striking how much of the Geula of Purim is connected to the Geula of Pesach.